So, what we are going to do today is we're going to take a surface and we are going to panelize it like so, and then we will take the panels and lay them out in plan and give them tabs. Pretty simple, right? So it uses a lot of techniques that we've already been using. But one of the really important things here is that we need to make sure that the panels that we are making are planar. Okay, so if we make a planar panel, what's the one shape that's going to guarantee us planarity? A square? No.
Triangle.
Yeah. Because if you do 4 points, 4 points make a square, right? But I can move 2 of those points, and what do I get? A hyperbolic parabola, right? So to make sure that, huh?
1 point on the triangle as well.
You can move 1 point in a triangle, but what will that make?
Still a triangle.
It's still a triangle. You thought you could trick me there. Yeah, so no matter what you do with a triangle, it will always be planar. And so I think what we are intending today is let's avoid making annoying things that will eventually need to be planarized or whatever. Like for example, if we put hexagons on a surface, do they have the danger of being not planar? Right, so it's anything other than a triangle has the danger of, right? So, but the thing is, if you had a hexagon, what can you break a hexagon down into? Right, so we can make triangles out of hexagons. So what we're going to do is we're probably going to divide our surface up into squares, because it's easier. And then we're just going to turn each of those squares into triangles. Cool? Then we just need to produce tabs for these to be folded and then assembled. Okay? Now, maybe if we have enough time, we'll do an example where you can see, you can imagine trying to assemble this thing. Yeah, it looks painful, right? So there is a technique that you can use that is very similar to this, but basically requires a little less work. Can any of you think, like just looking at this, can anyone think of that particular method? Like still using tabs, still using triangles. Can you, like for example, if I had this triangle in reality, what do I have to do with the next triangle? I have to stick them together, right? So
You could print them together.
we could technically laser cut them together, right? But we just have to encourage that they can fold at that point, yeah? So you could actually laser cut each band of the surface as a single strip, but that would require like doing things like unrolling, and that gets a bit difficult. Okay, so first what we'll do is you'll need to go grab your surface. So let's go find a surface that you can work with. Everyone's got one? Everyone good? Some people aren't following along because they're worried about their battery. Is that why? Oh shit. Still recording. Still recording. Excellent. Okay, so let's start with the surface. So, super easy question. How many sides does a surface have? Right, okay, so if I had a four-sided surface and I want to divide that into squares, what do I have to do? What happens? We just end up with, we can produce a whole bunch of four-sided surfaces in each direction, right? Easy. Okay, so a technique that we can use, so if we grab our trimmed surface, we untrim it so that it's, there's like this process that we've been doing for a few times now. So, and let's throw in bifocals. So there's a technique that we can use to effectively grab a section of a surface, okay? If I were to pick, like let's say I had taken this surface 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I've divided this into 5 and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's assume that I've done this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right, okay, so 5. If I wanted to just pick out this particular surface of that surface, this one, can anyone give me an instruction on how to pick that out?
4 across and then 4 out.
Okay, so along the U direction, how far across do I need to go? Which index? 3. So 0, 1, 2, 3. So index 3, and then what?
Index 3.
V direction.
Yeah.
Same, 3, right? Okay, so that if I divide that up, I could pick that out by index 3, index 3. Okay? Now, just remember that surfaces can also be represented as parameters from 0 to 1. From 0 to 1. So is there any other way that you could describe this particular surface on that, like subsurface on the greater surface by using only the parameters?
80%.
So that's 80% there, right?
Oh, it's the line. Also, would you have to verify?
Well, yeah, that's not a single line, right? That's a 3D it's a 2D object.
So between the 60% and 80%?
Yeah, so between 0.6 and 0.8, does this remind you of any type of object that we've used in the past? Like a type of
Domain.
parameter? So this reminds you of a domain, right? So if we go from 0.6 to 0.8, that's a way to describe this band through here, right? Then can you describe the band that we want in the v direction?
The same thing.
It's exactly the same. So 0.6 to 0.8, which will give us this band. So where those two bands intersect, we get that subsurface. Okay? So just to reiterate my point, just so I make sure people know what's going on. I'm going to do a different division, an easier one. I'm just going to divide by 4 in either direction. 4 and 4. Abigail, can you give me, I want you to pick out a square, but I want you to give me the instructions on picking the square out based on the parameters 0 and 1 and 0 and 1. Pick a square. Which square do you want to pick? This top right one? Right, but now you can't tell me, you need to give it to me through domains. So which square? What's the U domain? So this is U. So what's the domain? 1. Yeah, but it goes between what and 1? So this is 0.75, right? So what's the domain that you want to pick? Like, right. And then what's the domain in V? This is V. It's the same, right? So it's this one. So that's the one Abigail chose. Blair, I want you to pick a square other than the one that Abigail chose. And it can't be any of these. I want you to give me instructions on which one to pick using this system. You have no idea? Which one have you chosen? Do you see, even if by me asking which one have you chosen, you have to give me instructions on which one to pick out, right? Verbal instructions. So if this is 0.25 and this is 0.5, 2, 5, 5, 7, 5, and 1, which square have you chosen? Here, this one?
Yeah.
To where? That's not a square, right?
To the same U, but with the V is 25. I just 2.5.
You've gone 2.5?
No, the V is 2.5.
V is 2.5, so you've picked this V.
And with the same U.
With the same U. Yeah, but that's not a square. That's not a square, that's a point, right? So if you need to pick a square, you have to give me more than one number in the U. You need to go from the beginning to the end. So is it this square here? Is it this square?
No.
This one. I asked you not to pick one on the diagonal. So let's say you did choose this one, right? What's the minimum value in U, in the U direction?
0.2.
And then what's the maximum value?
0.1.
Right, so for you to give me the instruction, you need 0.25 to 0.5, right? For U. And then what's the V coordinates?
0 to 2
Perfect. Does this make sense? Is this making sense?
We could play Battleship.
We could play Battleship using this system. Instead of going A2, we could go 0.25 to 0.5. Okay, so we have used a tool in the past that takes surfaces and breaks them down into smaller subsets in their u and v directions. Okay, we've used this guy, isotrim. So what isotrim does is it requires a type of domain, one that is two-dimensional. Okay, so if 0 to 1 is a domain, such as this, (0 to 1), we can also have two-dimensional domains. Oops, we want. That look like this, right? So that is u 0 to 1 and v 0 to 1. So that effectively describes, if we talk about a surface, the whole surface, right? So if I actually plug this into a trimmed surface, no, actually, no, let's not do that. Cool, okay. So what we can do is we can divide both of these numbers with a component called divide domain. So divide domain will take a number in u and a number in v, and it will produce equal domains that divide them in separate directions. Now the key thing is you need to put in a two-dimensional domain. Okay? So I've just built one here with a construct domain squared. That's one that goes from 0 to 1, 0 to 1. If I can describe a two-dimensional domain as a direction going in this way and a direction going in this way, is there any other geometry that could also describe a domain that without it being an actual domain? Like it's something disguised as a domain. A what?
Square.
A square, or what else could this be? Squares have how many sides?
Four-sided.
So therefore, surface, right? So we can actually use a surface as a two-dimensional domain. It rarely gets used that way, but if I plug a surface in to a domain, it actually understands it as a 2D domain. Cool? Cool. Just as, what's another a point, what are the three values that make up a point?
X, Y.
And z? Right. So if I have a Cartesian plane and there's 0, and then I have a point over here at 1, 1, right? How do I describe a vector?
Just the point.
So if I had a point here and there, and we made a 2-point vector like that, right? What are the values that the vector actually ends up producing? Like, what makes up a vector? You need to know the direction in the x, the direction in the y, and with those two things combined, it makes the vector. So guess what? Points are exactly the same as vectors. They are literally the same thing. Cool? Okay. Just a little tidbit there. Okay, so if we plug in our divide domain, and right now we have defaults here, grab sliders, make them whatever you want. The only thing that it won't take is 0, and they need integers. And then what we're going to do is take the divided domain 2D domain objects, and if we plug them into the isotrim, that will produce subsurfaces to your surface. The more you do, the more you have to glue.
My item trim turns red color.
It turns red.
Yeah.
Are you using this?
Yeah.
And you're plugging your untrim in, and you like that. What if you mouse it?
Oh, yeah, I meant I know.
Yeah. By the way, guys, if something's turning red, for example, if we have this little guy here and he's turned red, then, and we get the null output basically, if you mouse over the speech bubble thing, it'll tell you what's wrong, and it says data conversion failed from text to integer. So that means the component was trying to turn this text, which was turned red, into a number, and it doesn't know how to do that. Okay, so just remember there's little warnings there to tell you what's wrong. Cool. Okay, so we've got our isotrim. Now these are all now individual little surfaces. And how many sides does a surface have? 4. Okay, so if we were to make, have we ever exploded a B-rep? Or sorry, have we ever deconstructed B-reps?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so just as a reminder, if I were to deconstruct a B-rep, it takes the surface or the B-rep, it outputs a face for every face that's on there. So these are all single surface objects, so they'll only have one face. It'll give us each of the edges, and it'll give us each of the vertexes. So a square or a surface, 4-sided surface, will always have four edges and 4 vertices. If I have 4 vertices and I want to make a triangle out of them, what do I have to do? Something's got to give, right? We've got 4 points and we should only be producing 3. So what do we got to do?
Delete one of the points.
Right, so let's think of it another way. We've got to pick out 3 points. I want you guys to pick out the 3 points that you want, and I want you to go grab the component that might make a surface from those 3 points. Think way back to week 3. Go grab a component that could potentially make a surface from 3 points, and grab the component that will allow you to pick out 3 points. And just be considerate that because these now are in branches, if you pick index 0 from branch 1, it'll also pick index 0 from branch 2, index 0 from branch 3, etc., etc. Is Emily already done? Okay. You just seem really excited.
Oh, we changed the colours.
Ah. Did you see me changing the preferences of Grasshopper? No. What do you mean you changed the colours?
Oh yeah, we changed the preferences.
Yeah. I'm going to eat a Twix. It's really exciting changing those colours, I know. You done?
Sort of.
You got 3-point surfaces? You got triangles?
I've got triangles, but they don't cover the entire surface.
They don't cover the entire surface.
No, I think I've got a shift list something.
Oh, as in they only cover 50% of the surface? Okay, that's fine.
I've done it the wrong way.
No, you've done it right.
Oh, okay. That is exactly the way I did it.
Good. Everyone got this? It's so funny. We're almost done. Huh?
More time for us to annoy you guys.
Yeah. You think you annoy me?
Maybe. We'll see.
None of you have. No, that's not true. Most of you haven't annoyed me. Hmm?
Look at you, Romeo.
Yeah, Romeo.
Romeo's been the worst.
Yeah.
You could teach him better manners.
If
so.
you can only say that if he's a sausage dog.
Oh my goodness, that was the worst one. Oh,
You can only say that if I'm a sausage dog.
terrible.
Hello. Is everyone up to this point? Please tell me you're up to this point. Cool. Okay. So, what's the problem? We're only doing 50% of the triangles, right? Because what we've done is we've drawn our, imagine this is our subsurface. We've got point 0. Let's go anti-clockwise. We've got point 1, 2, and 3, right? And what we've done is we've connected 0 to 1, 1 to 2, and 2 to 0, producing a triangle, right? If we wanted to produce the other triangle, what points should we be using? We should the other points. Well, no, not quite. That's actually the wrong answer. Because the other points are just 3. And you can't produce a triangle from just one point, right? So we need to be producing a triangle of 0, 2, and 3. Okay? So if I just copy my list item and we get our fourth object, fourth one, so we want to go from 0 to 2 to 3, and that will fill in the rest of the triangles. So you're half done. Pretty much. Okay, so this is something that annoys me about Grasshopper, about this particular component. This component here. What if I were to do this? So this component here is divide surface. Okay, like feel free to go grab it and put it in. We could literally put in the same number of divisions and the same number of V's into it. Can anyone spot the difference between the outputs of the divide domain and the divide surface? Spot the difference.
Device surface produce points.
Right, okay, that's a good difference. I don't care about that, but yep, good. That's a difference. So, one produces 2D domains and one produces points. Okay, any other difference that we can see?
One has
Like,
The other one has,
branches.
and the top one doesn't have branches, right? So what does that mean? That means this is producing a nice flat list, which in my case is very annoying because it doesn't actually automatically group these guys. So you can see here, this goes from 0 to 15, 0 to 15, 0 to 15, all the way down to 9, 0 to 15, and then at 10, it's 15 to 30, right? Hasn't branched it, and hasn't given me the opportunity to branch it, right? Now, when we come to actually laying these panels out in 2D, we kind of want them to be branched so that we can organize them. Do you remember how we organized the panels last week? Like they were organized in a way that there was like the right number. If we had branches here, it would actually be a lot easier to do this, but because we're using the divide domain, we actually have to get these guys back into a data structure that works. So the way that we are going to have to do that is we're going to have to produce a grid and then flatten the grid. We either have to get this data into a branch structure, or we have to make a grid that is branch structured and then flatten it. Does that make sense? So you usually, most of the work that you do in Grasshopper, once you get past like learning how to loft and do polylines and stuff like that, is just getting things into the right data structures. That's usually most of my job, is just getting things into the right data structures. Okay, so if we know how many divisions are there going to be in one direction? So in the U direction, let's say this is the U direction, there's going to be 31, right? There's going to be 31 panels. In the V direction, how many panels are there going to be?
10 panels.
Wrong. Completely incorrect. 10 panels.
Oh, like.
This is the one time that I asked you a trick question and you got it wrong. Yeah, so we've divided this by 10, right? But for every panel that we've done, every square, we've made 2 panels. So how many panels are there going to be? 20, right? Then, at the same time, right now, I've got a list that is separate to my other list. So right now, this guy's panel 0, and this guy's panel 0 in 2 separate lists, right? Can anyone think, hang on, so I'll just demonstrate. So once I flatten these guys, and I get their centroids, so we've got 2 lists. We've got a list of, let's call them right-handed triangles. Right-handed triangle, right-handed triangle, right-handed triangle. And then we've got another list with the left-handed triangle. Yeah? Can anyone think of a way of bringing those 2 lists together so that instead of it being 0, 0, 1, 1, that it goes 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Weave! I'm loving this. You guys are masters. Does anyone else, other than Jonathan, want to give a reason why weave is the good answer? Just need to make sure it's not just Jonathan who knows weave. Jamie? Pardon? That's dispatch. Dispatch. Yeah, so weave puts them together, just like as if you're braiding hair, right? You get one list and you weave it in. They get the next list, you weave it in. So if I were to now grab the weave component, we are going to put in list 1 into the 0 and list 2 into the 1. And now if I plug that into our points, we can see that is woven those two flat lists together to produce a list of 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. Cool? So the reason that we want to do this is so that when I start setting out a grid that's flat for laying these out to 3D laser cut, that 0 will laser cut next to 1, which will then laser cut next to 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay? Now it doesn't matter so much because we're gonna laser cut these all separately, yeah. But if we were working on this to actually like strip them together, it gets a little bit harder because you want them to be next to each other so that they're attached and they fold. See you, man. Okay, so we need to produce a grid to lay these out. So how many do we have in the U direction?
31.
Right, so we need to produce a grid. Under vector, we'll use a rectangular grid. So how many do we want in the X? We want 31. So we'll plug 31 into X. And that'll produce 31 grid sections, I believe. That'll produce 32. And then how many do we want in the Y direction?
20.
Which is 10 times 2. So what do we need to do? We need to write an expression that times a variable by 2. And if I just look at the output, how many points is it producing? We're producing in each branch that it produces 21 points. That's one more point than what we need, right? Right? And then how many branches is it producing? It produces 31 branches. That's one more, because just remember, you've got branch 0, so 31 actually means 32. It's producing 32 branches, and that's one more than what we want. So when we go with this rectangle grid, we need to make sure that the X and the Y variables have expressions on them that then reduce the number by 1. X minus 1, and we'll copy that and paste that into the expression of the second one. And that'll guarantee that we've got 30 and 20, or 31 and 20. Now, obviously, you're going to need to size the X and the Y distance based on the your design. So if you have bigger panels, they're going to need to be bigger values. So 500 as a maximum, we'll say, so we can space that out. Okay, so what that's doing is it's making some points in 3D and 2D points like so. and we have our woven points. So instead of weaving the points, what we probably want to do is instead weave the surfaces. So I'll get rid of these areas. This is just sort of a demonstration. We'll weave the two lists of surfaces together. Then we need to find their plane, because we're going to orient from 3D to 2D, and you need a source plane and a destination plane. So a quick and easy way to get a plane on a surface, especially in the center of it, is by doing an evaluate surface. We've used this before to do the mapping, like mapping a curve from 2D to 3D. Do you remember doing that? Well, instead of that, we can use it just by plugging in a construct point. If you right click and set that to reparameterize, and the constructed point is set to 50, or 0.5, sorry, 0.55. So that goes into the X and Y. What that'll do is produce a plane, a point and a plane at the 50% of each of these surfaces. So if I set that now to 1, let's do that. Ah, damn. I really stuffed that one up, didn't I? Okay. We can't use this value, sorry. Sorry. We can't use the construct point. What we're going to have to do is get the center point of the surface using area. Then we need to use surface closest point. So if you plug the the center point of that into the P, and you plug your surface into S, then we need to make sure that's reparameterized, because the value that we want out of it needs to be a reparameterized value. That's the distance. There we go. And then when we plug that into the UV of the evaluate surface, that'll produce a nice plane on our triangle. Yes.
Back when we were doing the expressions for the grid,
Yeah.
I assume they're going to come out of that at some point. Would it be possible to use a cull index after?
You could do that as well.
So that's fine.
Yeah, but you'd have to cull both directions. You'd have to cull the branch, and you'd also have to cull the points. So it's easier just to do it that way. But yeah, you're right.
I'll let it go to my head.
Okay, don't. Yeah, please don't. Cool. Okay, so we've got planes for each surface. We've got points that we can plug into X, Y global planes, which then will place planes at each of these points. Now, there's just one issue, and that is that we still have our grid is being produced in branches, right? And we know that the frames and the surfaces that we're working with, they're flat. Purely because of that divide domain, we've had to do that, right? So we just need to make sure that we flatten our planes, and now we're ready to orient. So we've flattened the planes. We go grab the orient component. We have our source frame that goes into A, our destination frame that goes into B, and the surfaces that we've woven together can go in the geometry. And there we go. We've got our triangles going into place. So if I just quickly show them, like so. If I now size this appropriately, that gives us each of the triangles. Now, it doesn't look like these go together because this particular triangle here, if we just sort of shift that list. So, for example, if I go the I index into B, the 2 index into C, and the third index into A, Actually, let's go one more. 2 into A, 3 into B. Oh. If I go anti-clockwise, it's just being a bastard. Oh, okay. So there's one thing that we can do to make sure these are all oriented the right way, and that's if we use the base surface to help point the plane in the right direction. So when you do this center point, and you've got this surface closest point and the evaluate surface, what we can do is we can actually do that on the original surface as well. So if you go and grab the original surface and plug that into the surface closest point and also plug that into the evaluate surface, that'll also give us frames at like roughly the right point on our hyperbolic paraboloid. So it's these frames that we can use to help direct where our other frame is. There's a few ways to do that. One is to just use that frame. Oh no, we just basically need to deconstruct a plane. If I deconstruct a plane, what do you think I get? Huh? If I were to deconstruct a plane, I get the origin, so that's the point of where the center of the plane is. I get the x direction, the y direction, and the z direction. So all we need to do now, just to make sure that these are in the right direction, is grab the align plane component with our original frame that's been on our triangles, take that into the plane, use the x direction that we've extracted off the surface as to help pick the direction. Then when we plug that aligned plane into the orient, yeah, we should be getting our triangles now all aligned. Cool? Not cool? Lost? You lost?
My grid is like this big and my triangles are like...
Okay, that's all that is this. So these are the distance, it's the distance between each grid section. So that's what I meant by making it relative to the size that you're working to.
Where did you connect those expression EX and
What does this say? Oh, these are the same values that you're using for the divide domain.
Oh, it's connected to the slide.
My triangles, they're all together now, but they're like, they're not in my grid.
They're not in a grid.
They're like everywhere.
They're everywhere.
Wait, do you connect it to both slides?
No, just the...
I'm not going to be able to get through there.
Or they're all over the top of each other.
Do you have a mouse?
No, I forgot to bring it.
Oh, there we go.
There we go. What? It keeps disappearing. Alright, I'm using
This
it.
happened to
I'm just
my
gonna
last
restart.
week's one as well.
Restart my laptop.
See this? You're using the point and not the UV point. So once you do that, crash.
Yeah, my
That's
You saved it, so it should be backed up. I don't know why all of your computers are so prone to crashing. Jeez. You would have been very young when that photo was taken.
not that young.
You would have been under under 10.
That's young.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's not that young. That's young.
That's a while ago.
Otherwise, it doesn't work.
Huh?
The grid doesn't show up.
Is it
Um,
connecting to these two?
Yeah, so it's turning red, right?
Yeah,
So why is it turning red?
I don't know.
It says there, grid extents cannot be less than 1. So here,
Yeah.
in your expression, you've just written -1 when you
Oh,
need to
fine.
write x minus 1.
How about this?
Sorry. Huh? How about this?
Also,
So what does this say? Area properties could not be solved because you're using points. So we gotta use the surfaces.
right.
Cool?
So no more.
Yeah, we remember I just got rid of the points.
Oh.
You missed that?
Yeah.
So guys, just as something that you may have missed, 1 second. I was using points earlier as just as an example to do the weave. Remember I flattened and then I did a center like this. I did an area. Get rid of that. We just want to plug the surfaces in, not the points. I was just doing that to just as an example. You good? Are you good now? Is it working? The expression is x minus 1. What's this song?
Under the sea.
Oh, there's a lot of fish, a lot of sea, huh? That's also x minus 1.
What are they?
Last week I was talking about fish.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, shit, the mountain. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
This has been today. This one.
That's just an example. You can get rid of that if you want. Are you? Yep.
Connect which?
Which is this thing?
This one. Connect.
Your first surface. That one. That yeah, that's good. That one.
That one.
No, yeah. Guys, just okay. So just to answer the same question again, we're using this untrimmed surface in the second surface closest point and evaluate surface. The reason we're doing that is when we generate the triangles. When we generate our triangle, right? When we get the plane, the plane's going in the XY direction, right? And then when we generate the second one, like so, it does the same thing, right? Like it just does this, X, Y, X, Y, yeah? So when we orient them, they'll just all point in the same direction. So what we're doing is instead we're saying, okay, find that point on the surface that it's on. So let's say the whiteboard is the surface that these triangles are on, right? So the whiteboard's XY direction is this, yeah? So there's the X. So what we're doing is we're saying, okay, take that point, find where it is on the whiteboard and find the whiteboard's X direction. So in that case, the X direction is that way. And in this one, the X direction is this way. Then align the plane to that X direction. So this one won't rotate, but this one's plane will. This one will rotate 180 degrees so that it is now going in that direction, which is then encouraging it to lay out realistically in 2D. Cool? Does that make sense? Are you going to use this stuff in architecture? Are you going to use this stuff in interior design?
Do you know what? I've got so much respect for computational designers now. because it is such a specialized field.
Yeah.
Like, I could manipulate a basic shape
Yeah.
to create something I want, or I could, like, pay a computational designer.
You'd rather pay?
to give me, like,
A script.
A script, and then I could manipulate it. But I feel like I need to study this for 3 years to be able to really do what I need to do. So,
Well, this is a really good foundation to move on.
yeah.
Like people can use it. People can learn it without being taught it. Like
It's,
just you're in second year, right?
yeah.
So you've got 2 more years to go. 2.5 years to go.
Problem is, I pretty much hate interiors.
Right. Okay. You don't like it.
Only because we don't get taught, and
Ah.
because there's nobody mathematical or logical in
Yeah.
the degree. They're all kind of space cadets. So there's no time to really. Anyway.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I do know what you mean.
Sorry, that sounded so hard.
No, you're right. No, I know exactly
Every
what.
class, I feel like I want to stab someone in the face.
Not me.
Not literally knowing in interiors, and I'm just like, how do these people not know how to teach? Like,
Yeah.
self-learning.
You know, we don't get taught. We don't get taught to teach.
I know, but it's a skill, and I feel like the university has like
They have
a
a.
responsibility
They
to
should.
employ people that can teach.
Yeah.
And it doesn't help that I'm a piano teacher. But
Yes, because you know you have experience teaching.
I know, and then, like if I have a teacher that's only just done undergrad,
Yeah.
and she's course convener and been course convener for 4
Yeah.
years, and she wouldn't know her asshole from her ear hole, basically.
For teaching.
For teaching.
Yeah.
But she doesn't really know the subject matter either because she's only learned from like it's an evolving.
Yeah, it
subject.
changes.
And
What is
because it's
what? Oh,
design-
don't worry about it. Don't.
We'll talk about it later.
Yeah.
Because it's design, it doesn't have to be technical.
Yeah. Okay.
Complicated.
I reckon we're there. We can move on to the next step. So, if we've got a list of triangles, right? But let's think of one triangle. Okay? Let's just pseudocode the final step. Is it already almost 2 o'clock?
No.
Okay, no. I was like, shit. Who keeps changing that? Do you mind changing that? There must be some like senile tutor that goes like, oh, it's, you know, the class is over. It's 12 o'clock. Like that's it. Like it can't keep getting like almost every week that's been changed for some, like unless it's broken. Do you think it's broken? Yeah, it's probably broken. Although I kind of like the idea that someone's actually trying to trick someone, like me. Someone's trying to trick me. Okay. So we have a triangle. Okay. We need to produce tabs. So a tab would look like this.
Offset the edges.
We'll get there. You're right though. Okay, so tabs look like this, guys, right? So we need to do a few things to our triangle to get it to look like this. Now if we go back to our pseudocode 2 brain cell man method, I'd like some people to give me some instructions on what to do with my triangle to get it to have tabs. Pardon? Okay. Get points.
Yeah, so those two.
Right. Then like keep going.
I don't know how you do the diagonal. Choose like a direction and vector.
Okay, you're doing it a very difficult way.
Oh, it might.
Okay, let's try different tact. Okay,
Shall we just pick at edges?
keep away from points for now. This one's interesting. I'm not gonna. What do you want to do?
Oh, pick an edge.
Pick an edge. Okay. I've picked an edge. Yeah.
And offsets a certain distance.
Right. Offset at a certain distance. So we'll just make that a variable. Okay. There's the offset.
And then shorten the offset length
Okay, so we'll shorten it to there. Yeah.
and join the lines.
Yeah, so effectively like join the endpoints, right? Okay, that works, right? But you've only done it to one side. So can we do that another way?
Can you just choose like all three?
So, well,
Set them out to like
wait, we've got a surface, right? What do we have to do? This is a surface. So right now a surface is not a curve. Yeah? So what do we have to do?
Deconstruct the surface.
So convert it to a curve. Right. Now, the method that we've used, I'm going to say, has made a closed curve, right? So if we have a closed curve and we offset, what's going to happen? It's going to produce that, right? So before we offset, we want to explode our curve so that it's three separate curves. So that when we offset, it only offsets to here, here, and here. Yeah? Then from then on, we take those same steps. So we just shorten this line by a certain length, that by a certain length, and this by a certain length, and then connect the ends together, and you've got yourself some tabs. Okay? So, let's do it. Let's take our surfaces, and I'll put this back on so that we can see. We've got our surfaces, and if we just plug surfaces into a curve component, then that will give you the outside curve of the surface. We then explode the curves. We then offset those curves. And in this case, because we're only offsetting lines, let's use the offset curve loose. But we just need to make sure that we're using the XY plane, because otherwise it doesn't know which plane to offset a single line on. And we can give that a variable. So we can say exactly how far we want the curve to offset. Cool. Then what's the opposite of shortening? Extending. So if we put a negative number into extend, we'll get it to shorten. So if I put in another, like if I use this slider here, copy that, plug that into the start and end of my extend, and if I set the expression for these to negative x, then that'll shorten our lines by that distance. And then if we there's a few ways that we can do this, and what's the best way to do it? The best way would be,
Minus x there.
yep,
Show the expression.
yeah. So then all we need is to connect the endpoints. So if we get the endpoint component, plug that into our trimmed line, and we then also plug that into our initial explode, and we draw lines between the start points and the end points, then that will produce tabs. Got another percussionist. We all good? So these two lines, like this list of lines, if I were to bake these right now and send them to the laser cutter, I'd probably want these on a red layer, yeah? Because they're going to cut. So if I pick these out, let's just plug these all into just one flat component, and let's just join them so that when the laser cutter cuts them, it cuts them all at the same, like just as one loop. So we'll plug that into a join, and as it goes into the join, we'll just flatten it just to double make sure. Then we bake that to a red layer. Okay, but we've got this line here, right? What color should I be making that?
Color that scores it.
Right, which would be just pick, like, do you remember off the top of your head?
Blue.
Blue. I like that answer. So if we make this blue, we bake this to the blue layer, then that will produce a cut and score so that when it scores into the material, we can bend it. Now, I'm not too sure about laser cutting metal. You guys are expected to make this out of like aluminium. I think like 1 mil or 2 mil aluminium, 0.3 mil or something like that.
And we have to like carefully fold every single.
Yeah. Yeah, so this is where it gets tricky, right? So has anyone done any craft work with metal? In year 9? You did craft work with metal?
Yeah, we'll just get like a ring.
Really? Like a steel ring or something?
Yeah, still
I have a really good example. We love to make nice sharp corners on things. Okay? But the thing is, if you make sharp corners in metal, you'll really recognize that they're sharp corners. So everyone's sort of dealt with a steel ruler. That is a 90-degree corner without any, like, just chuck your finger on that, put some pressure on it. Okay? It's not a nice feeling, especially if you're dealing with like hundreds and hundreds. Like if I do this, see that hurt, right?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay, it hurts, yeah? It hurts. Imagine having to like fold things with your thumbs. It's really gonna like screw them up. It hurts. Yeah? It's obvious, right? So we have an opportunity right now to make this a little bit nicer for yourself, just a little bit, and that would be, instead of baking these guys like so, we can take these joined curves and fillet them. So if we plug a fillet in and give that a radius, we obviously don't want it to go too crazy, but you can see how that edge is now no longer super sharp. And the score is going to go past it, but that's okay. We're going to basically, like, it's going to get cut here anyway. So what that'll also mean is these sharp corners that we're seeing, that the scoring would produce, like, it's quite pointy, right? That's also going to get smoothed out. And so when you start folding this, when we actually get a junction, you'll just get these nice little soft edges at the junctions as well. Very much like what Ankel was talking about in the lecture. Like, by doing that, you're avoiding a junction clash there. So it helps a little bit. Mind you, if you make this out of cardboard or paper, it probably doesn't matter. Okay? Like, as in, it doesn't matter to round it. You can make it out of paper, I think. I think the idea was they want you guys to aspire to greatness, and if the material isn't available, or it takes a long time,
Can we just make like a press, like a triangular?
you can laser cut card. Get a 150 GSM card. It'll work.
Couldn't we like just cut like a steel rod and then like a fitting around it so it would just automatically fold all of them?
Like a punch.
Yeah.
Oh, you mean folding them?
Well, yeah. One
Well,
fitting into the other.
This is the issue, right? I've seen people make aluminium furniture this way, right? And they usually, scoring it is not a good idea. Because once you start scoring metal, it actually makes all the metal along that score super weak, and it could potentially just fall apart. And it's expensive, okay? Aluminium is expensive. So what I've seen people do instead is along the junction there, they'll produce a serration pattern, maybe like this, that cuts all the way through, but then leaves these points here to fold. These points are weaker than a full band of metal, but they're not going to be compromised in thickness and fall apart. Okay? So the way that you can produce those, so let's just bake that to red. Where'd my layers panel go? So we bake our filleted thing to red. And if we select all of our blue curves and get rid of them. So if we were going to do a serration pattern, what layer do we need to bake the serration onto? Red or blue? Red, right. So there is this nice little component here called dash pattern. And if you plug something into that, a curve into it, you can give the curve a patterned dimension like so. Oops. And it will create like a dash pattern for it. And if you want to do something slightly different to just on off, if you plug more values into the component, they effectively respond to the dash. So this would be a dash, and then that's a gap, and then this would be a second dash, and so we can make this dash thinner. So you can make this one 1, and then we could put in a second gap. Second gap. So plugging those in order will give us dash, gap, dash, gap, dash, gap, dash, gap. Do you see that? Dot, dash, blah, blah, blah. So these probably have to be a bit smaller. So I'm going to set that to 1, this to 1, this to 0.5, and then this back to 1. Cool. And then we can bake that onto the red layer. So bake. And that then gives us a nice little serration pattern to fold. Cool? So we're doing, like, screw doing this manually. This would take forever. Okay, so there's one last thing. We have gone to the laser cutter. We have put these in the laser cutter. We have pressed print. We go to take them out. And some of them are stuck on the sheet, and some of them fall out and stay on the bed. And as you're picking them up, some of them get jumbled up and go in, like you drop them or they fall somewhere. When you go to sit down and to assemble them, which one goes where? Huh? We have no clue, right? Okay, so we can put information on here to help us assemble them. Now that could be as simple as numbering them from 0 all the way up to how many we've got, and that's what we're going to do this time because these are flat. Or you could produce numbers like A1, B3, C22. So the A, B, and C would represent rows, and the numbers would represent the columns. Or you could produce 1-1, 1-2, 1-3. There's so many different ways, okay? In this case, we're just going to do numbers. You've got the script. You can effectively have the script open to help you assemble it, so you know where to put what where. So if we put numbers in, now if I remember correctly, Grasshopper only has one way to bake numbers in. How does Christina want to bake her numbers in? She's used unroll. Yeah, 3D tag. So each of these curves, we can then get their center points, such with the area component, like so. Under display, there's a few there's a few display options here, such as text tag 3D. What that does is it takes a location and a text value. So for example, if I just plug in A, that will draw the letter A at each of these points. So there's the A there. We can define a size. A color. In this case, we're going to bake it onto a layer that will define the color. And justification. So if we right click this, we can pick which justification. So we just want middle center, like so. Now we don't want all of them labeled A. So if I just want to produce like a number for each one, can someone think of a way to produce a list of numbers based on anything? Huh? Point list? Oh, that one, this one. The display. This one?
Yeah.
Yeah, so unfortunately that one won't actually, you can't bake it. But as in, if I want to produce just a list of numbers, what's a component that I can produce a list of numbers?
Can we use a series?
Series, right? And what does series take? A start number, which would be 0. Step number, which is 1. And then what's the last thing? The count. So it needs how many? So if we grab a series, that takes a start number, a step number, and a count. So how many numbers do we want? If we just grab a list length, we can count the number of points there are, plug that into the count. Let's just make sure that they're integers because this thing actually produces decimals. So let's plug that into an integer component. And then let's use that to replace A, which will then give us these numbers. Cool. So then if we scale the size down because we weren't anticipating, three characters, there's all our numbers laid out, and we can bake them onto the black layer, I believe. So if we select the tag and we bake it, that's then baked those numbers onto these elements, and we've got some nice, sexy plans to laser cut and assemble.
Isn't this cutting the whole parabola, not just the shape?
Yeah, but it's fine. If you guys want to work out how to do just the shape, I'm gonna if you think we've actually did it last week.
Yeah, well, we cut it.
Yeah, so you could do the same thing with this. Yeah? But I'm gonna let you work that one out. Cool? Cool. So, and normally in this situation, you would be a bit worried you would actually label each side. So for example, 147 is connecting to 146. Which edge do you think they should connect? Yeah, like this one needs to connect to this one, right? So sometimes in complex geometries and complex plans, it might actually be better to label the edge. So that edge might be labeled 147A. Oh, sorry, this edge might be called 147-146. And this edge would be called 146-147. So you know that those two edges go together. But in this scenario, we're actually we're okay, because as long as our text is aligned as you assemble it, it should be in the right orientation, right? So if you have 147 and 146 together, like so, because see how this one is somewhat rotated to this one? That means there's something wrong, right? And it's more likely that you have to then take that 147 and rotate it so that it's doing that. Cool? So there's just what we're doing is we're thinking about, we're using scripting to make it easier to put the thing together. So there's one little trick that you guys can find. If you were to take these two lists of triangles, flatten them and join them together as a B-rep, like so. You can export this as a mesh. So you can export a mesh like an OBJ or a 3ds or that type of mesh file. And there is software that does a lot of this stuff for you. There's this one, which Corky might know what the name means. So there's Pepakura, which is Japanese for papercraft. And it literally takes meshes and it does exactly what we're doing now, but it provides you a nice little software interface to do it. It's about $30 and their security is really bad, so it's very easy to find a serial number on the internet and literally just type it in and you have it for free. And people use it to make helmets normally. But what it does, where's a good example? They're also not very good at explaining what they do. So what it effectively does is something similar to here we go. This is a good one. So if you give it a shape, it'll go through and it will produce a tab, just one tab, not two. And it has these tools that allow you to decide what edge has tabs and whether or not you want to produce something that folds instead of like breaking it all up. It's just a nice little user interface for doing what we just did. Because like if we were putting in an Iron Man helmet or a Batman helmet or whatever, there isn't like a rule system to decide which edges you want to have tabs and which ones you don't. So that's what this software is good for. And I use it. Like it's actually easier to use this than to script sometimes the stuff. Cool? But everyone's kind of, like they know what they're doing with this. So I would only do the serration if you're using the metal. You might even have to, with this serration, you might have to offset it and actually create like a thick hole instead of just a slot. Okay? With the aluminium, I'm not sure. I haven't cut aluminium with a laser cutter. I haven't folded aluminium with that laser cutter, so I'm not sure. It would be good if you did want to make this out of aluminium to maybe cut one with the blue line, like with the etching, and one with the red, just to work out, actually what you want to use. And instead of doing all 100, let's say, and then realizing that it doesn't work. Okay? Okay, so testing's good. Look at that. We've got 50 minutes to talk about anything. Cool? It's done. I said it'd be easy.
This was so much easier than the last few weeks.
Can I take the picture of the expression?
Yeah.
Because mine died.
Yep. The video won't take as long to upload tonight, by the way. For example, it won't be uploaded on Monday. Sorry about